and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today.
Welcome to Our People's Podcast. Today I'm your host, Amanda, and with me I have Tyson. So, Tyson, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Good morning, Amanda. It's Tyson here. Really grateful to be on the podcast, Amanda. It's funny. Like about 2 years ago, I was kind of going over some of the stuff in my life, and I'm like, I thought a podcast like this would be or something to would be pretty cool. And then I found out about it maybe 2-3 months ago. So I'm really happy. And I've got a lot of healing out of listening to other people's stories. Just the why I chose to come on the podcast. It's to I'm gonna read something here. It's for me. It's about hope. I'm a hopeless alcoholic, suicidal. I should be dead. I'm alive. So for me, this story, it's about hope. And I'm just going to read a little thing here for my reason. It's a poem out of Neil T. Anderson's book, Victory Over the Darkness. Really powerful book in my recovery. But I'll just, the reason why I'm on here is here's how the poem goes. Lend me your hope for a while. I seem to have mislaid mine. Lost and hopeless feelings accompany me daily. Pain and confusion are my companions. I know not where to turn. Looking ahead to future times does not bring forth images of renewed hope. I see troubled times, pain-filled days, and more tragedy. Lend me your hope for a while. I seem to have mislaid mine. Hold my hand and hug me. Listen to all my ramblings. Recovery seems so far distant. The road to healing seems like a long and lonely one. Lend me your hope for a while. I seem to have mislaid mine. Stand by me. Offer your presence, your heart, and your love. Acknowledge my pain. It is so real and ever present. I am overwhelmed with sad and conflicting thoughts. Lend me your hope for a while. A time will come when I will heal, and I will share my renewal and hope and love with others. And so that's I found that I just like that one. And if that's okay with you, to the listeners or whatever, like I don't want anyone to be triggered. And I'm a member of AA, and in there we do it's called higher power. So that's okay. I'd like to do a prayer before I begin. But just choose the God of your understanding. And I don't want to trigger anyone, but I'm just gonna, if that's all right, I'm just gonna say a prayer here.
Absolutely. Yep.
Father God, Abba Father, would just come to you. I pray that this will be a message of hope. I pray that it'll just be a message of hope, God, and the curses that are put on us, everything that's put on us, Lord, I rebuke those through your holy name. I ask that you would take literal possession of my mind, Holy Spirit, and that you would put words into my mouth, and that the listeners would hear me say things that you would want them to hear, that you would translate it as I try to explain these spiritual issues. It's a human voice trying to explain spiritual issues, Father, and I pray that you would translate it and that it could be a message of healing, love, recovery, because you are the ultimate healer. Amen.
Amen.
I hope that didn't trigger anyone. I get it, right? But where to begin? So I was, I was born, happy family, parents. out in central Alberta there, farm family. My dad was a tradesman later on. Lots of happy memories, actually. Uh, early on. And then when I was about 8, um, maybe 8, something like that, just going through my notes here. Yeah, well, birthdays. My mom came from a family of 14, traditional Mennonites, not Holdeman, but, birthdays were a big deal for us. Really, really special. Like she made you feel really important on your birthday. It was, lots of Bible stories in the evening, lots of love to go around. I have really good memories about that. But then around 8, 8 years old or something, like, that's the thing. This podcast dates, they'll be here and there, right? Like, I spend a lot of time, money, and energy trying to ground these memories. So the dates might not quite line up here. So, it's the experience that matters. But, I might say 10 years, 5 years, whatever. So, but, around 8, I think we went through revivals, and my parents started, I could just tell the suits would come over and things, I could tell that, my parents were incredibly frustrated. And so that's where I kind of was like, well, I'm not so sure about this whole thing. I don't, it didn't feel good to me anymore. And then anxiety, going to church, that as a kid, my nervous system, other people had talked about that, but my nervous system would just, going to church, I'd have to go up and say verses. Sometimes I'd have panic attacks, anxiety attacks, before I would go up. And the fear, right? Like, you got a guy in a suit telling you that if you're not good, you're gonna burn. Um, and for me, that I there was a lot of fear, I guess. Once I started to understand the world a little bit more at 8, you don't really understand it, but just a lot of fear. Um, and then, like, I remember I'd even be out in the evening, like, playing with my friends, and I'd see like a sunset. And I would just get scared, because it would make me think of God. And but he could throw me in hell. And I would just get overcome with fear, just seeing something beautiful like a sunset. And so that was, the other thing, when I went to private school, had an excellent first grade teacher, but it was kind of weird. Like, I was the first one of my first few days in school. No, it wouldn't have been the first, it was winter already, but it would have been in grade 1. So I see this kid, the older classes, they're playing prisoner's base, and this older guy is chasing a girl, and I'd seen some inappropriate stuff. It just really made me, I just, like, as a kid, I'm like, what's going on? Like, he was running up behind her, grabbing her inappropriately, that sort of thing. And I just, like, as a kid, it was weird, right? But it's a perfect system, right? We should be so grateful for education. So, I just confused, right? I didn't understand it at the time. But in school, that was good. I really enjoyed school. I was good at school till, maybe in the older grades, I started to, I'm not a genius by any means, but back to the school system, that I understood more about English than my teacher, and that really bothered me. I was taught that the school system was so good and all this stuff, but I was like, I was hoping for, I was sad, as a kid. I'm like, I wanted more, right? And then, okay, so grade 8, yeah, school was pretty good. I'm also deaf, so that's about the time I went into speech therapy, because I was talking with a very heavy lisp, and they found out I actually couldn't hear much at all. So I don't know how old I was at that time. There again, timelines, right? So when I had hearing aids, and I remember being just super self-conscious, like, in that culture, the way I grew up, maybe other people felt differently, but for me, I couldn't show any weakness. We would, I was in a grade of 5 guys, and we talk about it now. We wonder, right? It's about all kids, but, like, we were like buffalo. Like, we just pounced on you. If you showed any sign of weakness, the group would pounce on you, right? And looking back, like, that is actually, what we were seeing from the church. Like, if you do show weakness, this is how I feel about it. If you do show weakness and you do acknowledge stuff, you get kicked out, you get banished, right? So, I did feel even as kids, we understood that. And so there was a lot of shame around hearing aids. My grandpa would talk to me. He's like, well, just wear them, like everyone wears glasses. But I had intense shame around, being handicapped or being different. So, but I could get along. I was maybe hearing 50% of the words. I could get along okay. So my parents did give me hearing aids, but I just wouldn't wear them. And what else? So yes, but then other than that, school is just pretty typical. I had lots of good times, lots of good sports. But around, I don't know, maybe grade 8 or something, this guy comes in, a teacher, and rumor has it he choked someone out with a belt in another school, hung him up in a washroom stall with a belt. He was a tough character. So whatever, he seemed nice enough, everything, and everything went okay with him for a while. But then one day we were playing soccer, and I just got some new boots. It's winter. Alberta, it's cold all the time, and it's cold, everything's icy, and I had some new boots, and they weren't soccer boots by any means. And we were playing soccer, and I was trying to curve the ball, and a girl was blocking it, and I took a kick, and I was gonna, curve the ball around her. And it didn't go around her, so I'm like, oh, new boots, try again. So the ball bounced right back to me, so I went for another shot, and it hit her again. And I'm like, oh man, just a little more on the edge of the soccer ball, bounced back to me, a little more on the edge of the soccer ball, it'll go in. So I went for my third kick, and out of the corner of my eye, I see the teacher, like without a word, I just see him coming at me out of the corner, and he knocks me to the ground. He puts his hands around my throat, and he just tries to choke me out, right? And I remember just laughing because I didn't fight back. I mean, you can't fight back as a Mennonite, right? But I just like, what's going on here? Like, it was weird. No one talked about it, was never acknowledged. Game went on, or we all went in. Everyone was like just looking at me. I'm like, well, whatever, right? And then, so I was like, that's pretty weird. But, and then later
wait,
on,
no, you told your folks, right?
I think I did. I'm not even sure if I did at that point. That's a good question. I wondered that too, but I don't even think I did. I would just like, because in that, I was just full of, I think by that time, I should maybe back up, actually. I should maybe back up a little bit, because that's a good question. But around, because this is important, around, how old would I have been? Maybe 12. I did the typical, what you hear here, right? Like, you get all this fear put on you. So then I went and, I would pray at night. And, I would never hear anything back. But, God would save me and whatnot. I never hear anything back. And the one night I did, I was so excited. So I went and, a couple of my friends, we got baptized, right? And, I just remember, as a kid, like, this is just where my mental state was at the time. Like, it was mainly to get out of that fear of, like all the fear I was in. I'm like, well, no, I'm finally going to be safe. I'm going to understand the answers. I'm going to be part of the group. And, but I remember being up there. I still remember it, almost the shirt I'm wearing, knee one up front, and the brown carpet there. And I'm with a friend. He's, and we're sitting there. And he's a pretty, he's a pretty sensitive guy. And they're baptizing him, right? And he starts like trying to hold back laughter because it tickles. And then we move on to me, and we're just both trying not, like, we're not being sacrilegious here. Like, we're serious about this, but we're just trying to keep our composure because it tickles, right? Like, we're just kids up there. And so then anyway, and that's why, like, I figured now that I was part of the group and this happened, then I was, I mean, in my mind, I was a man, right? I was part of that was my initiation into the clan or the group, and it was kind of up to me to handle stuff. So, I don't know, but anyways, I don't know what happened with that. I forget that, but it was just kind of strange. But then later on, I don't know if it was that year or the next, that same teacher, it was really weird. He followed, he all of a sudden wanted this, girl. She was kind of one of the more popular girls in the school, and he wanted her to go into his office and have a get to know you meeting. And she was super uncomfortable about it, and she started crying, and we're all watching this, and we're kind of like, you're paying attention to your work, but you see this going on. And then anyways, it's time to go down. We did the evening or the afternoon, like singing. Some days we had to go sing, and she was up there with him. And as we go down, we see him following her into the washroom, and we're just like, this is so weird. It's inappropriate, right? And she's just crying, like she's beside herself, and no one does anything. I'm like, should I step in, or like, what do we do here, right? And she just, she's upset. We go down and sing, and we're all like awkward. We go back up, and she's just beside herself. Like he was in the washroom with her. Like, I don't know what happened, but I just remember being super, that was really strange for me. Completely inappropriate. So then I remember, I guess that's the time I really started up questions, so then I brought that up. I talked about that to my parents, and, no one really said much. And then I seen, other men go talk to this teacher, and what, nothing happened. And I'm like, oh, good, because they already felt unsafe by him. He choked me out. Now he's following girls into the washroom and having creepy get to know him meetings in the office. You know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, good. Finally something's going to happen with this. When, nothing happened. I think she got suspended for 2 days or something like that. We had another substitute for 2 days.
Wait, who? Okay, he got suspended. Okay.
Yeah, but like for 2 days. But
Okay.
No one said anything. They're just like, they never explained it to the class. There was no explanation. He was sent, like, he didn't teach for 2 days. That's all we knew. And like, a lot of us were members at that time. And it never got brought up in any meetings that I went to, nothing, right? Like, that was just, so I'm like, this is pretty strange. Like as a kid, I just remember being super uncomfortable about it.
So how about here's a service announcement. Something we were not taught that we think everybody listening should teach their children, that see something, say something.
Yes.
Something,
yes.
say something. And don't wait. See something, say something. Make a scene. It's okay.
Yeah.
If you're wrong, it can be figured out later. But if you're right, you can potentially save something from happening, because an older teacher in a bathroom with a younger girl, she is completely and totally at his mercy.
Yeah, and there's no world in which that's okay. And even as a 15-year-old boy, I understood that, or 14 or whatever, right? But I brought it up the chain, you know what I mean, to my parents, and then nothing happened. So I'm like, it was just a really weird place for me to be. I felt very powerless, at that time, extremely powerless, because that just doesn't feel good, having that going on in school, and you got to go listen to this guy. And Mennonite teachers have a tremendous amount of power.
Yep.
And so, okay, so then there was that. And then what else?
Are you going to talk more about the teacher? Because if not, I have some questions.
Yeah, no, I have some questions. Absolutely.
Okay. So he sounds like he had some mental issues, possibly a psycho. So what happened to him? Did he straighten out? I mean, did he end up, marrying okay, or did he choke somebody out and kill him finally, and before somebody took notice and actually did something?
Well, what happened? He was married at the time. There was some other things he tried. It was just, he was inappropriate in my opinion. He would take the kids aside, like us boys or whatever, and try to give us, talks about sex, just inappropriate stuff. Like, it wasn't sex education. Like, it was just a little weird, like mentally or whatever. Like, it was just very strange to me, right? But he was a good singer. He led a lot of, singing stuff or whatever. So, it is what it is, right?
But, okay. So he sounds like a predator, but go on.
Yeah. Well, I think he had a lot of her in his past, right? Like a lot of predators do. So, But anyways, so, but then, so where to from here? Oh, yeah, so when at that time, I think around that time, that's where things really started kind of to go south for me. One of my really, uncles I was close to, one of my younger uncles, I did a lot of work for him, on his farm. He treated me real well, gave me lots of attention. And he became ordained and, was a minister. And I see him kind of withdraw and that sort of thing. And I'm like, oh, whatever. But and then maybe a year or two later, then my other uncle, younger uncle, we would go hunting together. He would spend a lot of time with me. And, he was kind of I guess you could say he was my hero at that time, successful tradesman, built bigger. He was my idea of what a man should be, right? And he gets ordained. And, I'm like, oh, okay. As a kid, you're supposed to be excited and stuff. And I was member. I think I wrote their names down each time. And I was pretty impressed with how, I actually remember from my one uncle, it was a very dark, like I remember hearing from, a voice, but I remember being very like a dark experience for me. Um, I just, a lot of darkness and kind of a voice came out and, then I wrote that voice down. I don't know. I don't know where to, I just thought I should mention that because it wasn't it wasn't a joy-filled voice or anything like that. It was more of a darkness, and in the darkness, a voice came through. So, but so yeah. So then he got elected, and I was pretty excited. It's the guy I hunted with and everything, and then I really enjoyed. He talked a lot about Jesus, and it was I really because it was older. There was two older guys before that. I know there was two young guys, and they we talked about Jesus a bit. I really liked that. And then revivals came around, and then it was his first, as a minister, his first revival. So the suits from Kansas came out, and they were pretty. We always were worried, as kids, because we had our kind of system there, and then in revivals, they would usually send up, the legalism would come down. People from other congregations would come in, and it would be that way for a while, and then we could go back to normal. But it was always quite a bit of fear who would be coming in to lead revivals, and so the suits came in, and they just emasculated the guy, in my opinion. Like they had him up in front of, this is my uncle who was, my hero. They had him up sobbing in front of the congregation, apologizing that he was a minister, and he never, I forget which book it was. I think it was the Doctrine book, or one of the Holdeman Mennonite books he had never even read, and just to look at disgust on the preacher from Kansas face. He's like, here's this guy's a minister, and he's never even read this book. Like, just pure contempt coming out of his. And my uncle was emasculated. He was up there, crying, and it just made me sick. Here these guys were coming from wherever they were. They didn't know us, and they come in, and that was my hero, right? And they just took him. They took him down, in my opinion, to nothing. Like, they made him. It was really humiliating, for me, and then that, that's really, I guess, where maybe my resentment started against. I had questions before, but that's when I started to feel actual hatred for some of these, for some of these leaders, right? And because to me, I just couldn't reconcile it. But anyways, when there was that, and it was a big deal, I guess. I was told, no one really told me anything as a kid. That's a funny thing. You think when you get baptized, then you'll know you're in the inner circle and you'll know. But even then, they as a kid, I only got partial bits of information about what was going on. But from what I gathered, there was just lots of problems there, like Mennonite problems. They couldn't go to communion for years. I think it's 12, 20 years. And I just remember how excited my grandpa was. I had a good relationship with my grandpa. He was so excited, they could finally go to communion. And so when I remember my first communion, and it's it was just, to me, it felt really strange, really dark. People walking around in their socks, and I remember my feet getting washed, and it just felt really strange to me, like really like a ritual. It felt like a ritual. It just felt strange to me. And I remember the minister that wash my feet. It was to me, it just felt weird. You're walking around in your feet, he washes them. Then he gave me, the holy kiss. It was just, to me, it's like there was nothing to him, like just softness. And it was just, and that's the other thing I wanted to talk about was the holy kiss. Um, for me, it's always felt really strange, really weird. And I wonder, like I haven't been to a lot of therapy or anything, like AA is kind of my thing, but I'd like to talk about that because I think there's multiple reasons, but I often struggle getting close, like to other males, to men. And I wonder how much that plays into that because you know, it's really strange, that whole ritual. And I never was comfortable with it. It never felt right to me. Those who are, that with their sexual orientation, where they're not sure which way they're trying to figure that out, and just kissing, like that must raise a lot of you know. I don't agree with that, especially older men kissing younger boys. That'll never be okay in my world. And I was talking to someone about it. I need to look into that a bit more. Um, but to me, that is also a ritual. For men, that to me it was very humiliating to have to do that. Anyways, so there's that. Yeah, just it's really quite the ritual. It was strange. And then I don't know when to bring this up, but around the time I'm just gonna bring it up now. It'll make more sense. But it only became clear to me much later in life. But around 8, 10, 12, somewhere in there. Well, I would have been probably 10. I had to sweep over one of my aunt's place. She wasn't a Mennonite, but grew up like she wasn't a Holdeman Mennonite, grew up Mennonite. And she brought me into her bedroom, and inappropriate stuff happened, right? And I remember bringing that up. I just remember feeling so much shame about it, and how it was my fault. And I believe I was a member then already, but just I didn't understand. I was a kid. I hadn't been through puberty. I didn't understand what was going on. And but I just remember being so upset, like those predators work. The next morning she sent me for chocolate bars from the local store, and it was she gave me like $1.50 or whatever. It was just a simple thing, but to me it stuck with me because this is how the system works. So I go to the store for chocolate bars. She wanted two, but it was, you know, 75 cents each. You get three for, I know it was a deal. I saved her 50 cents by buying three. And I knew she liked to eat. She was overweight, and she had eating disorder. And that could also be part of it. And I go back, and she just goes ballistic on me. Like, I told you to buy two, you bought three. And all that shame she put on me. And that's how those predators work. They project, right? But I took that on me, that shame. Like I remember getting into the bus and not being able to look the bus driver in the eye. I couldn't look the world in the eye at that point. I always struggled. This will come up later. My parents would tell me, when you shake someone's hand, look them in the eye. But I struggled, to look people in the eye. And that'll come up later.
Okay, well, I'm going to interject here that if your aunt was all of the things you mentioned about your aunt, I'm going to guess that something must have happened in her past as well.
Yes, 100%. No, there's a lot of, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here. I want to be very careful because it's such a closed community. But at the same time, that's where, those of us that grew up in the Mennonite circles run into problems. I do feel like this stuff needs to be exposed. But yeah, there is a lot of generational trauma throughout the family lines there, a lot. Sexual, it's it's definitely something. I don't know how much to mention on this podcast because it's public, but because some people, that's the other thing. Like, well, I guess we're there. Like, this was I guess we're gonna skip a bit in the story. So this was a repressed memory, and it only came up later, like after I'd gone through a lot of healing. I'd been sober for maybe 4 or 5 years, and no, 3 years maybe, and this came up. And because as a kid, I just didn't have the tools to even acknowledge. Like I brought it up, to my parents, but like, it's the same thing for me. Like as a parent, you think you're there for your kids, but like no one's given us a manual. This is our first time, right? And I'm sure there's things my kids will say later on too, like, Dad, we tried to get your attention with this, but I had wonderful parents, so they really did the best they could. And I don't blame them for that at all. They've apologized to me for not being there and all that stuff. It's actually been, there's been a lot of healing there. But my point is, when I did, like later on now, when I did bring that up, some people in that extended family, like when you're the whistleblower on that, like I have an aunt who whistleblows some other stuff, brought up some other stuff. So when you bring this up, like some people, honestly, I don't feel have the tools, like where they are at their life, they aren't able to acknowledge, so they just shove it under the rug because they don't have the tools to even deal with that, and it's like you're a threat to them for even bringing that up. But anyways, that'll that's more a later story, because that was a repressed memory for me that only came out later in my recovery. But anyways, just the shame that put a lot of shame on me, and once I did whistleblow that, there was other cousins that brought up stuff that they remembered. No one talked about it, of course, so someone blew the whistle. And then, not even Holdemans, but just other cousins in the family, stuff that happened to them as young as 4. And I always remember feeling a lot of resentment and hatred for her. So who knows what happened, before I could remember? Who knows? You know what I mean? But anyways, I think that plays into my story a bit. So that's
Okay.
why I mentioned it.
So I would like you to know that you can say as much as you want to on this podcast. That's what this is about. This is about bringing awareness to what has happened, and to letting people know that are out there that listen to this podcast that it's okay to be the whistleblower. It's okay. It's okay to step, because you are stopping this in the long run from happening to others behind you. And it's okay. So that, I don't know if you listen to Starla Tave's
Yeah.
okay.
Really enjoyed that one. Yeah.
Yes. So so absolutely. There is nothing off limits for you to talk about on this podcast, because we want the awareness and the hope, that it gets better, that you work through this, that you come through this, and that there is nothing wrong with you or me or anybody else that any of this stuff happened to.
I like that. I like that a lot. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, that just kind of, that all played into my mental state, I guess, at that time. It was just the normal stuff, like the authority. I'm a pretty free spirited guy, and I would have not been the easiest child to raise. So here again, I don't blame my parents for it. I had wonderful parents, but what they knew and what they were taught was, you just kind of, what do they say in the Holdeman's? I mean, you crush the kid's spirit, or you beat him till he gives in, or So there was quite a
break
few.
their spirit.
Yeah, break their spirit. That's the word. So there was my dad just wanted the best for me, and but there was a lot of run-ins. You know what I mean? We've talked through that. We have a good relationship now. But as a kid, a lot of resentment against just authority, I guess, and. Somewhere in that time between, at 14, somewhere in there, I did, I just remember sitting, like, just feeling hopeless, just, with just all these things I still don't know. Like, now looking back, it was obviously a demonic spirit. That was, but I would just feel, all of a sudden I'd be fine. I'd feel a tightening. I'd feel shame. When I would sit in the back entry, like I did a lot of hunting, and I would sit there with my shotgun with the finger on the trigger, and I'd just pray I'd have the nerve to pull it. And like, for no real reason, you know what I mean? Like, obviously my nervous system was going off, but like, it wasn't like it was a particularly bad day or anything, but I would get these episodes, during the day, right? Just the darkness would overtake me. When I would get, I never real, but it wasn't really serious, it was more, like, I was just more of a self-pity party maybe, but looking back, it was definitely a demonic, something demonic was, closing in on me, it felt like then. So, anyways, where to go? Yeah, so then that was that, just work, school. I didn't have a lot. I mean, I really enjoyed hockey. We played a lot of hockey. That's fun. I had a really good group of guys, just rec hockey, or the kids out in the back. That was kind of my escape, right? Like, yeah, I'd get out. I'd just skate for hours out there. That's where I felt free. I love to skate. And I wouldn't feel anything. I would just flow when I skated. None of these, uh, you know, dark feelings, I could just skate and I felt free. But then, yeah, so it went on like that, different stuff here and there, just normal, adjusting, going through what they called youth or whatever. And, and I was deaf. I was getting a lot deafer at that point. I did a lot of hunting without hearing protection. Wear hearing protection when you fire a gun, kids. But that wasn't. I was born deaf, but it definitely didn't help anything. So I was struggling, I guess. To follow along. Like I remember even in grade 9, I was behind quite a bit. You know, in conversations, I was always leaning into here and that sort of thing, and it felt really awkward for me. And just youth in general, trying to figure out the system. It's definitely there's a lot to the Mennonite youth system, how that works. I still don't know how. Looking back, it's quite the system. So, but I had a lot
It's
of
our
fun.
high school.
It is a high school.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, but I remember the one wedding, people were out. I was having a lot of anxiety. I was having a lot of fun, a lot of anxiety, meeting new people. I think it was one of my first, like I was just out of school. I was maybe 15, 16, meeting a bunch of people. And we went off to a mall. And we're sitting there having lunch, and some of the guys ordered a beer. I'm like, well, I got to try this stuff. So I ordered a Smirnoff Ice. And so I'm sitting there,
Were you
all
old
nervous.
enough?
I was like 15, 16. No, I wasn't old enough. They bought me one. He's my cousin, right? We worked together. He
What's your
was old enough. He was a
well, I don't know what
Mennonite.
your drinking age in Canada is.
18. It's 18.
Okay, ours is
So
21.
yeah. No, I wasn't that old. I think I was 15 maybe. And but we're sitting there, they're having, not everyone's drinking, but a few are, just a beer, right? But I remember the second that Smirnoff Ice hit my I took the first swallow and that sensation going down, and it was like the world opened up. All the feelings of you know of just the darkness, anxiety, everything was just gone. And I was just, oh, it's so peaceful, like just bliss.
On your
And
first drink?
first drink, yeah. And it was it was like a sexual orgasm to me, really. Like that's how powerful that experience was. Like it was incredible. It was just an incredible feeling of just relief and release and just peace. And I'm like, whoa, it was unbelievable for me. So, I didn't even finish it. I was feeling so good. I'm like, I don't even want to feel better than this. So I didn't even, like, I went maybe 3/4 down. I let my cousin who bought it for me finish it. Like, I was just feeling so good. And I just remember riding back and just being like, oh, I found something that finally worked. You know what I mean? Like, I feel all these feelings, of, just life, like all this frustration, about work, you know, the system, these ministers from Kansas, a teacher, all this stuff. I just felt release from it. And I'm sitting in the back seat looking out the window, and I feel great. Like at that point, that was the best I felt in my life. And I go back to the youth deal, and it's just like things came easier for me. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, this is amazing. This is incredible. Like, and we can't have this stuff, but like, what a feeling. What a feeling. And so then shortly after that, of course, that felt amazing, and I was a kid, so I grew up, always seeing the world around me operate. Like the neighbors would go by 5 times a day, bringing their girls to sports, and I go in a private school. I always wonder what was out there. So I had another friend from another congregation working there, and he was. A bit of a wild child, they called him, and so his time I snuck out the one night with him, and we hit the nightclubs. And I was 16, but I had sideburns and a mustache, so I just walked in like I owned the place. They let us in. He looked older too, right? And we I got hammered. It felt so good. Like I remember my dad came looking for us, the poor guy, and we seen him, so we snuck out and we're running through the parking lot. I'm running, and I run right into a pillar, like flat out running, caught the corner of the pillar in my head, and I fell to the ground, and I felt no pain. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. This stuff is unbelievable. And
I'm 10 feet tall and bulletproof, apparently.
yeah, exactly. It was amazing. Like, just all these feelings of powerlessness were gone. And I had, it was an incredible night. And I just remember, heading home and talking, and I could talk to my dad. Like, it was weird before. Like, uh, as a kid, that's the other thing. I like, we would try talking to each other, and now looking back, it makes more sense to me. But I could never talk to him. Like, I would try to talk, but it was like there was a something was stuffed in my mouth. Like, I could never get my feelings out, and I would try to talk, but nothing would come out. And I could just talk to him. I was just chatting to him on the way home, and I think he finally they both told me to shut up. But I'm like, I didn't even have. It was just I loved being drunk, loved it. So then I snuck out a few more times, and then so finally, well, they found out about that. My dad found out about that, so of course
Well,
that goes
they
into
they probably wanted you to be contrite, and here you were, just chatty Cathy.
yeah. But he did save us a DUI. I mean, we were heading to our car, and he stopped us, and he did save us a DUI. So I'm really grateful that I had a parent that would walk through a nightclub to go find me. A lot of kids don't have that, so
Yes.
I owe a lot to him for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then they brought that up to the to my uncles or whatever ministers, and to me this is also where it got really weird, is that my brother was going to be married, so then I was going to be best man for him, right? And they said, well, yeah, but this is a serious problem, but we're just going to deal with this after the wedding. I'm like, oh, it's interesting. I'm like, I just felt like powerless again, because it's not about me. Like, even my problems, like, this is a serious deal, but my brother and the wedding and how it looks trumps, my problems, right? So then, yeah, there was that. So I just remember being miserable, and then, running. I forget how that worked. I kind of forget that. I think they expelled me shortly after the wedding, and that was. I remember that, like, just that feeling of, they brought me up there, and I'm a kid, right? Like, 16, and I just remember them, saying that. And I remember, like, I didn't know what to do. Do you leave now or what? So, I heard that we had a metal door in that church. And that's what I remembered. It would go, like, people would get up and then they would leave, and you'd hear that cold metal door slam. And so I got up, and,
It was
I
a
walked.
door of heaven slamming on their salvation.
Yeah, yeah. But I still remember that feeling, like stepping out, like being banished, like I wasn't good. Like, so I left, and exactly that. I remember that door. It felt like the door closed on my soul. Like I was just out there like, it was a cold night. It was dark, and all these stories of things that happens to expelled people or whatever. And so but I was just I was kind of cold then. I mean, I had a lot of hurts, right? So I kind of forget that time, but then I think revivals, and then I had some good times, weddings, drinking, whatever, going to nightclubs for a little bit there, and then, but I mean, I didn't want to go to hell at that point. Like, I had a lot of hurts, a lot of resentments. The stuff felt amazing, but I didn't want to go to hell. So no one wants to get burned for eternity. Right. So then I 16, I had I mean, I had to live with my parents. I couldn't move out. So, I mean, there wasn't a lot of options. So I went back, had an experience or whatever. And I think I felt that I didn't want to drink anymore. I really didn't. So then that happened, and I got back in, and I'm just trying to remember, how that went from there. But yeah, I still would drink a bit. I loved getting drunk. So then after that, we'd go snowboarding or whatever. We'd hang out. And, I'd drink a bit, but never, it was kind of like to get drunk, right? It was that line. As long as you didn't get drunk, like they said, a bit's okay. It was just really confusing for me. You could, but you couldn't. And I'd try to toe that line, and I could quite successfully. I could control my intake quite well, at that point. But I would self-medicate. It gets really dark and cold in central Alberta in winter. And, when things were low, there wasn't hockey games to keep me going. And, I would grab a 6-pack. I wouldn't drink it all. I'd have one or two. I would manage my intake, and it really helped me out, I thought. And but then youth, it was just the normal stuff, right? Some of my friends. Oh yeah, that was the other thing I was going to bring up. So when I did get expelled, and then no one really talked to me, none of my friends, nothing. But then I got reaccepted, and I'm like, oh good, well now we can be friends again. But it was nothing. They never shook my hand, nothing. Like they didn't bring it up. I was like, that's weird, right? Like it's supposed to be this thing, but later I found out they were a lot of them, not all, I shouldn't say all, a lot of them were doing the same thing. They were just keeping it a secret, right? So they didn't really want to acknowledge that. I've always been the hard-headed one, or I've led with my emotions. You just do. I'm not. The only way to find out in life is to go for her, right? So, but yeah. So I remember being really hurt.
I'm gonna guess
that.
you must be a middle child. Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nailed that one. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But then where to go from there? Like I just remember a lot of like struggle, being in the youth, trying to, find my place, wanting more, like from what was going on out there. It looked like people were having a lot of fun, but I was just working, and I never enjoyed volleyball. Lots of people actually, enjoyed the game, but that wasn't my thing. But I would go, just for a bit of a social life. So much singing, so much church, so much revivals, and but just normal stuff till then. But then well, I did meet my wife at that time. I'm forever grateful to the Mennonites for meeting her. Around that time, I did meet my wife, and yeah, it was. Yeah,
Did your wife grow up in the Holdemans?
She joined about 12. Her parents were not members.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was that was incredible. So then also, that gave me a lot of hope meeting her too, right, for the future.
Yeah.
When I came back, was reaccepted. Sure, but I don't remember the timeline. I think I met her when I was actually expelled, but then I got back in, and we weren't, we spent a lot of time on the phone talking, and she was an incredible support system to me. Even before we were married, we'd spend hours on the phone talking. She's just an incredible woman.
That's awesome.
And yeah, she was kind of I called her my angel, at that point. Like she was my support, my one person to talk to. They say that's a whole other topic about, I got really lucky. But like all these people marrying people they don't know, it's risky business, in the Mennonites, that whole courtship thing. So, but
and not only that, but how the staff will sway one way or the other, like that is scary.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very scary.
So lucky for you that you were allowed to marry who you loved.
Yeah, no, that was the best part of my whole Mennonite experience for me, was finding that amazing woman. So, but then I knew that I wanted to get married, but you can't just get married at 18, by the system. I mean, I maybe should have, but, that's, so I knew I wanted to marry her, but, so then it was kind of no man's land there for a while for me, because I knew I wanted to get married, but, well, they want you to go to class. So then I remember going to class, and, like my brother, had a really good experience in class. He came back. He was pretty excited. He had the answers. So I was looking forward to it. Finally, some of these questions and some of this stuff might make sense to me, right? So I was still quite hopeful that there, a lot of these questions I had about this religion could be answered. So went out to class, and
for interest sake, where did you go?
Florida, Walnut Hill. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay. No.
Yeah, wonderful community there, actually. And one of my really good friends was at class. I went with two of my good friends, and then I met another guy. We became really close. You'll play into the story later on. But I just remember him sitting there, and you could tell he was just there to be there, to check it off. And, at first I was kind of like, oh, this guy needs to get with it. And then the more class went on, the more I realized how much of a system it was, and like it just wasn't making sense to me. The whole thing, like it just felt like and I remember the one time, like it just, that's the other thing, the class instructor, was the same guy who had emasculated my uncle back in the day. So right away from the start, I had resentments, right? And so yeah, that was a terrible experience for me. I almost left halfway through. Like I thought I was gonna get some answers, and had really a lot of fun with the guys. It's fun to hang out with the guys, but it was just really really strange experience for me. And it really made me question. I thought I was gonna get answers, but I left there just like, I mean, this whole line, like, because I remember they would do this line about why the Mennonites were the one true church, and they broke off from this church and this church and this church, and that's why. And I remember going like, well, I mean, like I do math, right? Like you do maths and you figure out the answer, and then to double check, you go backwards. So I went backwards on this line, and I'm like, any church can go backwards on this line and have the same reasons. I'm like, so this doesn't make any sense. And I was just really disappointed at, I figured I'd find some answers, and I just was more confused. So, anyways, forget from there. Oh yeah,
Did you sign the super secret document saying that you would love the church and uphold her doctrines and like basically pledging to the church at the end?
I'm sure I did, but I have no recollection of that. Like I was still, I wanted to get married, so I'm like, do what I have to do. So then, so and that was so a lot of confusion at that point. Like I was really questioning things at that point, but I didn't know what to do with it. Where do you go? I didn't want to go to hell, whatever. But so anyways, I don't really this part of the story. So I got married. That was awesome. Wonderful.
How old were you?
That was good. I believe I was 22.
And how old was she?
21.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. So we got married, and then other people had talked about it, but I remember just like it's really strange. Like all of a sudden you're in an island. You go from like having these parents in the church telling you what to do, and then people just leave you alone. And like, what do you know what to do? And I just remember instead of enjoying it and being in the moment, like even on our honeymoon, I was like, what are people going to think of this? Can we do this? And, that sort of thing. And, so, just a lot of fear always, like, what are people, and now it was up to me. What are people thinking? Just the fear that was on me about, it felt like everyone was watching me all the time. And, I try not to live with regrets, but that period of my life is, that's what, like someone also mentioned, like the patriarchy. I'm not proud of the man I was, at that point. It's not, those aren't great memories for me. Like my wife's an amazing person, but who I was, it's just not, I'm not proud of the man I was at that point. Very confused, very powerless, always worried, always stressed out, that sort of thing. And
sounds like you were a good little Mennonite, right where you were supposed to be.
No, I was, and
I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but men when they are emasculated, they just are. The church steps in, and so you go from being this young man, full of life, you're your own person, and you get married, and all of a sudden that church takes a different position in your life, and you need to answer to it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then that's the other thing too. I remember, that is one thing I remember is like we're getting married. All of a sudden the phone rings, and my uncle's like, "You got 2 weeks to get your beard growing there. It's too short. Get her done." Hangs up. I'm like, okay, here we go, right? So yeah, but that was literally the phone call. I was like, wow, okay, yeah, stuff like that. But anyways, so then how to make sense of it from there, like so we in your place and everything you try just to make sense of things, just now it's up to me or whatever at the house. And that time is kind of blurry for me. I just feel like it was, I guess you don't live with regrets, but there's so much we could have been doing, traveling the world or whatever, but we were Mennonites. So and so then how, like that all I kind of, well, that one friend, I guess he plays a big part of the story. The one friend from the class, I would snowboard with him a lot. And he was our best man. And I'm not going to mention his name. Those who know me will know him, but just because part of my story later on, I want to keep the anonymity. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here. And but he was just a tremendous friend to me. Like I remember I got hurt at hockey. There again, I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus, but it was a really vulnerable moment for me. I got hurt. Like he's the guy I phoned. He was just always a brother to me. Like I felt a lot of people I couldn't build connections with, but he was just, he was like a brother. Like he was, he was there for me. He always had my back. And, and then he got married shortly. We were young marrieds. We'd hang out, we'd go for supper or whatever. And then I don't really know exactly. Well, the wife said I could say this. I'm not going to tell her story, but, I think, a lot of people were frustrated, with just different things. So then we were with a bunch of people and we're driving home down that 4-lane interstate, whatever. And all of a sudden she just takes her head cover and throws it out the window. Whoa, guess we're doing this. So, because she leads with her heart, I try to have things figured out. And so there we were. So I guess we weren't, I actually forget what all built up before that. Oh, that is one thing I should mention, though, because it is a big part of it, is that I did. So then, of course, me and my wife, we weren't married in the youth. We enjoyed spending time with each other. So, where are those lines? You know what I mean? Like, of course, we kept our purity, but, where are the lines, So I just went up. I remember going up to my uncle and I'm like, well, just to be safe, like you should probably, we did kiss and stuff. So you should probably just expel us just to be safe. Then we don't have, if that ever comes up later, we don't have to worry about it. He's like, oh, no, 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 no. Like, I'll know if it's right. And I'm like, well, I think we should. Like, I might not have told you anything. Like, let's just expel us. And then, it's clean. If it comes up later, no, you're good. You're good. I'm like, okay. But I said, I might not have told you anything. Like, like, where are those lines? I don't really want to talk about it with you because it's private. But he's like, oh, no, I'm sure it's good. Sure, it's good. So I'm like, okay. So there was that. But then, yeah, we did something. But this part is a little hazy for me. It wasn't a great time. But I remember, oh, yeah, that I spent a lot of time then going through like the doctrine and practice and all that stuff. And what a waste that is. For me, I was trying to find Bible verses to leave in a way that made sense and to leave right. And if anyone's thinking of leaving, like, I just wouldn't. There is no right way to leave. Like, and that'll come into the story later. But I did actually, and then we started going to another church, and I was spending a lot of time just like researching. And then this friend who was fresh, like this from class, I'm not going to mention his name, but he was also questioning, and we spent hours just researching. But I was doing a lot of it on my own, and I actually went like they say, well, that was the other thing. Like, yeah, I guess I should say they did expel us. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling here. None of this is pleasant for me to go through, so I'm kind of jumping over. This is not a good time in my life. But they expelled us. I forget. I thought I said something about, even then, like, I was upset about how the church, because someone had come to me and told me about how, like, someone I grew up with. No, I don't know when that came. I don't know. Anyways, we laughed. They expelled us. I still don't know for what. I wish I would have gone to that meeting and said my piece, but I didn't. But I was
Okay,
still
so
quite.
let me understand a little bit. So you guys
Yeah.
were driving down the road, your wife takes her head covering and throws it out the window.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said, well, okay, I guess we're doing this. So
Yeah.
prior to
Yeah.
that, you guys must have had conversations about leaving.
Yeah.
And so then she throws it out the window and they're like, okay. So then did you
Yeah.
go
No,
to your uncle
we had
after?
talked about it like for
Yeah.
months, years to
Yeah.
that point, right? Even when
So,
before we were married, we had tons of questions.
okay.
Yeah.
So by
Yeah.
this time you had been married how long?
maybe 2 or 3 years. I like there again. I don't really do dates. You would have to ask her, but it was a while, like 2, 3, 4 years, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then you went, is that when you went to your uncle and said, just expel us because we might have crossed lines, but we don't
Oh
know?
no, that was I was jumping around there. That was before we got married, but I
Okay.
forgot about that. Like,
Okay. So
yeah, it was just might
do
be the
you
thing to do.
remember what you went to your uncle over and said, hey, we're leaving? Or did you guys just, she showed up in non-Mennonite clothes?
No, like so then that happened. So then I forget how that all went. To be honest, she would probably be able to remember. But I think we thought like we just stopped showing up. You know what I
Okay. Yeah.
mean? And she
Yeah.
stopped wearing. She was working in a business in town. She stopped wearing her head cover, and the ministers would come. I mean, it was obvious we were done. We hadn't really been going to church much till then, anyways, and we just kind of stopped showing up. So, but then for me, I was just so, to be right. To be right was very important.
Yeah.
And around this time, I still wasn't like getting drunk. So it was so important to me to be right. And so, I mean, we'd have, but yeah, I mean, I drank on our honeymoon and stuff. But like then after we got expelled, it was just super important to me because I was going to prove my point. I didn't drink. And so then I went through a bunch of doctrines and just a bunch of studying in the Bible alone, and I would caution anyone against doing that. I actually did go, like, I got to the point where it was just me and these this feeling like the church was still, even though I was out of it, it was still controlling me because I was trying to prove I was right. And I did actually, I don't know how to say this, but I did go a little mental. Like I was sending gibberish to people and stuff. So I think anyone leaving, like, or for me looking back, there is no right way to leave and you don't have to figure stuff out. And if you're trying to figure it out, they're still controlling you, I think. But yeah, so that I'm not proud of any of that. You know what I mean? It was all about me and my ego and being right. And, but then my friend he was on quite a journey. He was in, to, exposing a lot. He was really digging into like the sex abuse that was going on in the church because his mother was abused and by a minister when they were younger, and so he was really on that journey. And I was really excited for that. Like these guys are wrong. We're gonna prove it. All this stuff. And he was just an incredible, incredible person. A real brother to me. He was exposing this, and I kind of took a step back because he had a lot of light. And I just wanted to be part of his journey. And at that time, he was my connection, I guess, to the world. Like I had my wife, but the community was gone. And then, well, that's the other thing. Those curses they put on you were really a big part of me. More and more, but they said, our marriage would fall apart. If we left, our family wouldn't be safe. We'd have problems and all that stuff, right? So that was in my head. It was out to prove them wrong. But anyways, so then, yeah, so then my friend was really into this stuff, and he was kind of my last connection to the world. Like he was like, I always knew, like I was in a really dark place mentally, or just arrogant, or I was in a really weird place. So it's not like we were talking on the phone every day, but like he was kind of my connection to the world. He was basically the only one I had, because my wife was very good at making friends everywhere, but, I lost my community, and he was kind of my connection. And I was mainly just focused on proving to the world that I was right, and drove myself crazy doing it. But anyways, so then, so he's going into this more and more, exposing more and more stuff that's going wrong in the church. And I'm just really excited because I'm like, dude, we got these guys. You know what I mean? Like dead to rights. What a joke. And I think that's when I brought it up, like because more and more stuff was coming out. I think it was Easter around that time too. I'm really proud of him for stepping up, by the way. But somewhere, like a lot of this stuff was getting exposed, so I'm like, well, yeah. So then I think I even sent that in a text, when we laughed something about abuse. But he did a lot of digging, and it was incredible. He was reading tons of stuff. He was helping me. He introduced me to the book Love Wins, and that really, by Rob Bell, and that was really a powerful book for me to read. Like it's not about for me whether it's right or wrong. I don't know, but to me it was. I really liked the fact just about the love. So I remember that gave me a lot of peace once I read that. And but then the one day, and I get a text from him, and he's like, "Well, what about the sexual abuse cases in Edberg there?" I'm like, "Well, that's interesting. I don't really know if there are many." I'm like, "Interesting, you know." And then I get a call later on, maybe about 2, 3 hours later, and he just died in a construction accident, my friend. And you know, it was when he died. Um, to me, that was my last kind of connection to the world at that point. Like I felt I was an island and there was nothing or nobody. And you know, he was. I had a lot of you know, I was excited for where he was going. Like to me, he was, you know, he was exposing this stuff, and then he was just gone. And you know, I was crushed, like spiritually, you know, crushed. And yeah, that was really dark. I remember seeing his wife, and you know, they were just married, just beautiful girl, wonderful girl, and you know, she was just distraught. And you know, it was really really painful for me. It was more than, you know, I've lost a lot of people I was close to, but you know, he was the one guy who had my back, and we were doing this together, and then he was gone. And and I just remember being crushed. Like that just crushed me. So then I got really upset with God and just with everything. I was just like, you know, I had all this ego, you know, about proving I was right. And then, you know, this guy who was actually like, it was just incredible what he was doing, and, you know, the stuff he was sending me. And, you know, he was on a real journey before he died. And then he was gone. And it was like, it was just nothing. It was just kind of me and my wife, right? And so about that time, shortly after that, like I remember I started drinking like heavy, and it just felt so good. I didn't have problems, you know, when I drank. And you know, we started going to different churches, and I don't know, like that's the other thing, you know, looking back, I wish we would have just taken a break, you
I
know,
have,
because
okay, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, but
yeah.
if you don't mind telling me what kind of a construction accident, because at the moment, the fact that he was exposing an organization the size of the Holdemans, I have my questions whether it was actually an accident or not. So if you'd like to clear that up, you're welcome to do that here.
Oh yeah, no, that was the kind of guy he was. Like he would just like he would give you the shirt off his back. So one of his guys, that's actually a big part of the story too, how he died. Because he was so like I don't know, he would send me stuff. Like he would be because I love wins, and then also he's like, what's this pie in the sky business? He's like, we need to start living now. We need to start loving now. And I think the last song, well, I just sent it to his dad the other day, but it's because he was curious. But he was like the Afterlife by Switchfoot. I don't listen to Christian music much, but it's a really good song about just living now, right? Like that's where he was. And like he had no fear of death or anything. And he was on a real like spiritual level. And so one of his guys put the telehandler into the power lines, and his guy was frozen at the controls, and he went to knock him off. And he tried 3 times to save that guy, and he did save the guy, but he died. So that was the other part of it. Like that's just the kind of guy he was, right? Like he was an incredible. Like I don't even like I struggle here even bringing him up because I can't put into words that type and the quality of person that he was. Like he was one of the most incredible men I've ever met. And he taught me a lot about brotherhood and about being there for people. And he would love me when I couldn't love myself. Like we'd go, you know, if I remember the one time I went to see him in Saskatoon. I was having a really rough time mentally, and I got drinking. You know, he went and found me, pulled me out of the bar, that sort of thing. That was just the type of guy he was, right? And so, um, yeah. But
So
then,
the good die young.
yeah, no, 100%. So then, so then I was just crushed after that. And I, yeah, started, going to different churches. How to explain it here? I don't really know. Like, and then, yeah. So this is really where the story begins, I guess. But so when I started drinking, to deal with that, and well, things were not going well with my family at all. It was really tough. Like I cut them off. Like my family, uh, because I couldn't handle the avoidance and that stuff. So, yeah, it was just me, and we had our kids and stuff, and I thought I was handling my drinking pretty good at that time, but I was drinking a lot. And then, life goes on. Did a lot of work, a lot of stuff. Just we had a boy or whatever, but just emotionally and spiritually, I was pretty crushed. Like I was pretty wounded just with all this stuff, and so I don't even really remember, where it started. It just started as I would drink a lot, to cope, and we went to different churches, and oh yeah, that's where it started. We went to a church, and one of the guys there, he was like the pastor. He's like, well, yeah. He said, like, God told me to have a beer. He said, if you don't drink, you're basically legalistic. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's probably true. So then I could drink with no guilt, right?
Wait, the
So
preacher told you that God had told him that if you don't drink, you're legalistic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We don't go there anymore. But yeah. So, but yeah. So then I, just from there, how to really explain this? It just work, different things. Lots of hurts, and I guess just to sum it up, my drinking really started to take off. I was
Escalade
drinking,
because you were told to drink, so you weren't
yeah,
legalistic.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah. You were
and
given the license to drink.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there was a lot of darkness, like looking back, a lot of like pressure on me, like just a darkness would overtake me, and I would drink, and but it was fun. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun. It was a release. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to handle these emotions, and it was a release, and it worked really well for me for a long time. It was a really pleasant thing for me. I was a happy drunk. I was a good guy, and then it started the one night we're with another church by that time, and we're around the fire and we're drinking, and we're drinking a lot. We were craft beer guys at that point, so it wasn't a problem. Christian craft beer drinkers. So I mean, but it doesn't matter. We were drinking a lot of craft beer. So we're around the fire there. Just a peaceful thing. The kids are in bed. The one guy's strumming the guitar, and we're chatting. And someone brings up something about church, and something. And I'm sitting there by the fire, and I had this feeling of being back in church, and just like I'm drunk, and it's like these ministers are right there in front of me, and I get this uncontrollable rage, and I just lose it on the guy. Like I don't even remember what I said, but I remembered I like this. There was no control of this rage, and it was almost like I wanted to kill the guy. He was my best friend at the time, and I just remember waking everyone up in the campground yelling. It was a big mess. I was, but that rage just came out of nowhere, and so that really scared me. So I think um, yeah. So I mean, how to make sense of this? I don't know. So then I went to. I'm not sure if I went to AA for the first time or not, but I think I'm. Oh no, I didn't. I didn't go to AA. No, but I was just really a lot of shame about that. A lot of shame about that. And so then, so when I quit drinking for about a year, I had no problem quitting for maybe a year, 6 months, 8 months, because I was so embarrassed. And then, the hearing really started to wear on me. Different things, work, stress of life. I was drinking a lot. And then we went to other people mentioned it here, choices. that was a wonderful thing for me. But in there, that was the first really, I mean, that was a very spiritual experience for me. They dig a little bit into your past and that sort of thing. So, but I remember in the seminars, they had an AA meeting, and I remember going in there and listening to the people talk, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I got a problem here. You know what I mean? I kind of knew I was an alcoholic at that point. But they also brought up God, and at that time, I didn't. I was so upset with him for taking, because there we were, on the cusp of taking down the Mennonites. My best friend dies. That was it with me and God. I was done. And so, but anyways, then back to drinking. So then, yeah, I could quit, but then it wasn't that bad. But then I forget what happened. Something else happened. And my drinking got bad again, and I was feeling pretty hopeless. So I went to AA, and I ran into another guy, a Mennonite guy who I knew had a drinking problem, and I asked him to take me. So he takes me, and we go to a meeting or whatever. He's all right, and I just explained to him where I was at, and he's like, well, it's a spiritual program, and I'm like, yeah, but I said I don't want nothing to do with God. And I got no interest in anything, religion based or spiritual based. And he's like, well, he said, I think that's the only way you're going to recover, though. So and I just remember just laughing. And I'm like, so you're telling me I'm screwed? I said, them are my options. Either find a God or just keep living like this. I said, those are my options. And he's like, yeah. And I just remember laughing, like a really sarcastic laugh. And then yeah, things, I started drinking a lot. I couldn't I would go to work. I tried drinking at work and I couldn't work. I'm a Mennonite boy, I'm a workaholic, right? So it affected my work. So I would never drink at work, but the second I left work, every day I would say I wasn't going to drink today. I'd go to a liquor store and I'd have 2 beers. I had 10-minute drive home. I'd have 2 beers by the time I got home. And then I would say hi to the wife and kids fast as I could to get into the fridge and get my next beer. That's how my drinking was. It was work, drink, and then do it. Everything else, it was do what I had to do I just would do what I had to do. And it got really weird, the drinking. Lots, it was fun for, a lot of, I got a lot of release from it. And then even then, sometimes I remember drinking and, I go to a bar and I would break up fights. Everyone want to shake my hand. I would get really happy and everyone wanted to be around me. Then there was times where I would just get super violent, angry. And so then, and this was really starting to affect everything in my life. I was just a zombie. I was white in the face. I was not operating on a high level at all. And then the one night, I remember I was pretty drunk by the time I got home, and my wife was upset, understandably so, justifiably so. She put up with so much stuff. I got so much gratitude to her for sticking by me. But so I come in and I'm pretty drunk already, and then she wants help with the kids because I wasn't really helping out with the kids or anything. It was all about me and my problems, and I just wasn't a good person at that point. And so I remember putting the kids to bed, and I remember being so drunk I bumped my kid's head. Putting him into his bed. I bumped his head on the wall, and I slurred and everything. And then she wanted to talk to me about bills and finances, and I just I got upset, and then she's like, well, when is a good time to talk about this? And she was right, because I was just drunk all the time. When would be a good time to talk about this? And this rage came up, and I took a step forward. This rage, I wasn't in control. I took a step forward to hit her, and I didn't hit her. I stopped halfway, but that just crushed me because, she was the number one thing in my life, and I was going to hit her. And I have a very strong moral code about violence against women, and I just felt like worse than nothing at that point. So I head off to get, and I'm out of booze, so I head off to get more. I head off to get more from Camrose, and a buddy texts me, so I go to his garage, and there's about 14 of them in there. They're planning the fishing trip, and so I go in there, and there again, that rage comes over, and I clear out the garage, right? Like I get upset with the guy, and no one wants to play with me. Everyone leaves, so I'm in my buddy's garage by myself, and I'm like, what a bunch of pussies, they can't even put up with a little alcoholic anger here, and I went and I grabbed. I just went because at that, when you're a true alcoholic, you can pretty much smell booze. So I went and I grabbed a couple, found some in his garage, and I headed home. And I was, I was drinking. Well, we were smoking up when I was with him too, right? So this part isn't really clear, but I remember heading home and drunk and high, and I'm heading home, and I'm driving home, and there's a hill right by our place, and I'm going down. It sounds corny, I know, but I'm going down the hill, and oh, that was the other thing. I'm gonna finish the story, then I'll mention it. So I'm going down the hill, and I'm just crushed. Like I don't want to go home. I'm upset with God. Like nothing's going right, and I'm like, I'm just gonna. And it's like these like now it makes more sense to me, but back then I didn't understand it. But it was like there was always like voices chattering behind me, like chasing me, and it was like, well, I'm just gonna just run it out on the highway. I'm gonna find a semi, and it's done. I don't know how to live. Like I've been suicidal for quite some time, but this was just it. I had a good life insurance policy at the time, and I'm like, everyone's gonna be better off without me. So I was just, and I remember praying, I'm like, well, one last chance. If anything is out there to help me. And that, I just remember being completely, like at that point, I didn't have emotions. Like I, it was like when you drink like that, it was like I was floating through space like an astronaut. Like you could see the world happening around you, but like I wasn't part of it. I had no feeling. People would like I just had no feeling. It was like you would watch yourself live, and
Numb.
just numb. Yeah, completely numb. And just hopeless. Like I was drinking, I had to drink, but there was no joy from it anymore. People don't talk about that, but like if you're a true alcoholic, like it'll turn on you. Like I had to drink, but I wasn't getting a buzz anymore, and it was getting me angry, but I had to drink, and that's a really hopeless place to be. Like I would put my I would but for example, Easter would come, and I'm like, oh, there's good deal on alcohol, so I'd spend $400 worth of alcohol, and it'd all be gone by Monday. You know what I mean? Like that's the type of drinking I was doing. And then every evening I would go put my empties in our stairway, and I'd be like, so many empties. I gotta quit this. And then every day, 5 o'clock or 8 or whenever I quit work, that would be, and I would mix up liquor stores. You know what I mean? I would go to a different liquor store every day because, I didn't want to make it obvious that I was a drunk. And I found one guy actually I kept seeing in the liquor store. So I was all excited. Someone finally drank like I did. And here he was, a hotshot driver for the town. But anyway, so I'm driving home. I'm going to end it all, because that was my life at the point. I couldn't figure out, everyone, and so I'm just feeling hopeless, and so I'm gonna end it, and then I must have been coming up. I mean, I'm drunk and high, right? But I just remember looking at the moon as I'm like basically pleading, like in the Bible, it talks about, our spirits, cries out or whatever, and words we can't utter. I just remember, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit a truck. But I remember looking at the moon, and, I still can't explain it. And it might even do more harm than good trying to explain it. But it was like an intense feeling of love came out of the moon. And, it was like when I was a kid sitting on my grandpa's lap and he'd sing to me, or like my dad, reading Bible stories, but it was just this feeling of safety and this feeling of, you know, this voice said, you're gonna have to stop, or you're gonna be all alone for eternity. But it wasn't like, not eternity, but you're just gonna be alone. Like the voice said, you're gonna have to stop. And but it wasn't like condemning at all. Like there was no condemnation. It was just this intense feeling of like finally something out there. Um, it was like here are the facts, but also a feeling of just safety. And I remember and so I remember going home, and I still had one beer left yet. And I remember putting that beer in the fridge and just going to bed and just thinking, like something changed in me when that voice, like I can't describe it, and I don't want to, but like something changed in me. I got a little bit of hope there.
Unconditional love?
Yes, yeah, it was like I still can't. I wish I could describe it, but it was a feeling of just intense love. Um, and but back to that, like that's this thing of running ex-Holdeman's, running it out on the highway. Like the guy who brought me to A meetings talked about those voices. He tried to kill himself, and I ended up totaling a truck. And then another, here again, I won't mention names, but the people that know, like we lost a guy, ex-Holdeman, who ended his life exactly the same way. He got into a fight with he ended up driving into a truck. And so, that's something I've looked into, with the curses and everything that gets put on. I find it, like, to me, 3 is a pattern. So I don't, to me, so I just figured I'd point that out. Like, it's really interesting. But that feeling of just being pursued and wanting to drive into a truck, and how many ex-Holdemans have done that. Like, that's not a normal way necessarily to commit suicide. So, what that spirit is, or, it's very interesting to me. But, and so anyway, so then, it was like this feeling of intense, I knew I needed to quit drinking, but it was like there was, you know, so then I go to an AA meeting, and I walk in there, and I'm just like, I'm pretty much, I mean, I'm broke, like financially and spiritually. Like I'm almost dead. Like I haven't, like I'm in really bad shape. And I walk in there, and I just remember the lady across the table. She looks me in the eyes. I tell her my story, and I'm like, well, these people aren't gonna understand me. You know what I mean? Because I thought I was so unique or whatever. And then I go in there, and I'm a Mennonite. I should know, spirituality and that. And they told me. She just looked at me. One of the ladies looked at me, and she said, you're never gonna have to drink again. And I'm like, you guys don't know me. I wish it would be true. I've tried for 5-6 years to quit this on my own, and I couldn't. Like I could for a time, but it would always come back. You know, and because I tried really hard to quit on my own, like for years, or to control my intake. Like I could when I first started drinking. And so, um, so then, yeah, I started attending AA, and it was really interesting. Like there was handicapped people there. There was a guy, and he was pushing this handicapped lady in a wheelchair around, and they're just giggling. They're giggling, but they look like alcoholics, but they're having so much fun. And I wanted that. I hadn't laughed in months. I couldn't cry anymore. I would try to, I couldn't cry. There was just no emotion left in me. And um, yeah, so then I started, to attend an AA, and this time I didn't care, because if you're it was really clear to me, if I was suicidal, so if I kept drinking I was going to die. So then this whole God thing, it really wasn't a choice for me. I was willing to see what they had to offer, but they just said you just got to pick a higher power. And I didn't know, like, because the God that I knew wasn't there for me. The voice that came out, in the moon, I didn't know what that was. Like, it was just an intense feeling of love. So I just said, well, yeah, it's gonna be, I just decided my higher power was gonna be love. And so when that was, you know, really, that was really good for me going to AA, and just the love that people wanted to help me. Like there was a guy, and he took me under his wing, and he'd explain the book to me, and he'd been, you know, and I had for whatever reason, then I had a lot of resentments or a lot of fear, a lot of pain around sexual abuse. And just how much that had played in. I think some of that's just generational trauma and then some of what's happened to me. But I always had when I was drinking, that was always a resentment with the church. And that was the other thing. When I was drinking, I would always, you get drunk and I would just go round and around in circles about how, my uncle had screwed me out of $4,000 and I was an X-Men, and it was always the same story every time, right? All these resentments would just go round and around. But then they got me to do do the steps in AA. So there you do, you go through your life and you just write stuff down, what that you're resentful at. And, well, it was obvious. There was a lot of things, but in the nature of this podcast, I had a lot of resentments towards the Mennonite Church and how I was treated, and I didn't get the help. Like I remember even being as a kid, sitting in church, and I'm like, I'm drinking, but there's a way bigger problem than this with me. And, but no one had answers for me. No one could help me. I felt in the Mennonite church, like there was a lot of condemnation, but no one would help me. And here I was getting help. Like people they cared how I was doing. They'd ask me, how are you doing today? And they would, the regular there, he would sit with me in his Jeep till like 1, 2:30 in the morning in McDonald's parking lot because he was having a rough night, and he would just talk, right? He'd talk like, he knew. He grew up Catholic, and he knew about sexual abuse. He had stories for me, right? And he would just talk. He would talk. Well, that's the other thing. I guess we should go back up a bit. Is so shortly after, it's also a big part of my story, I guess. But so after we're expelled and I'm working, I hire a guy. Here again, I'm not going to mention names. It's pretty obvious to figure it out, though. But he was a 1%er and pretty high up. And he was working with me, and he taught me a lot about respect. And he also taught me, what the options out there as far as, I really, that's one thing I realized is that I was closer in connection with him in regards to, pedophiles, how to handle them. And I had a lot of resentment, a lot of plans on how to get even, with pedophiles within the church. At one point, I was going to raise a lot of money and go on a one-man crusade and take them out one by one. Like that's where my mind was with the Mennonites, which is so resentful. So I was just so resentful, so much hurt, and I'm doing my step 4, and you write out everything, and then I'm still super, with God and everything in the church. I'm upset. Just so much anger and hurt in me, so much pain. And but then there's a chapter. I'm going to read it here, not the whole chapter, but in the big book, it talks about. There's a chapter to the agnostics, and it helped me a great deal. But it here I'm gonna. Where does it? We'll just find it here. Oh yeah, so this was because the AA is big on resentments. Our resentments and fear are that's what controls an alcoholic. And it talks about fear to an alcoholic is worse than stealing. Like the fear is the worst thing an alcoholic can have, and also resentments. Like it says, oh, I wish I was better at quoting it, but it says we start resenting stuff and then we become sick. And also a big part of the literature is it's that the higher power is the sunlight, and that we the more we do as will, the sunlight comes in, and that if we do things, it just blocks us off from the sunlight. Like resentments and fear blocks us from the sunlight, and our lives suffer, right? And so it was a totally different perspective on spirituality, and I was just soaking it up because it was working for these people. But here's what they say about churches that really help me. It's so they're talking about alcoholism, and then it says, instead of regarding ourselves, this is in the chapter to the agnostics, instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists chose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the alpha and omega, the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? We who traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is about. Yeah, so that's what helped me. I'm like, it's really um, the it's not for me. And as a Mennonite, I was taught I had to be the judge, and I had to judge people. And then in AA, it's about acceptance, right? Like, just it's love and acceptance. And oh, it's been an incredible journey for me. Like I did I did my step 4, where you go through everything in your life, the institutions you're upset with, the guy's upset with anything authority related, cops, banks, church. You write out all this stuff and all the things you've done, and then you write down. Well, I should have found it, and then you write down, well, what was my part in it, and I was so resentful in the world, but I had this list of pages of things, and everywhere it was like, I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't stand up for myself. And as a kid, as a Mennonite kid, I would stand up for myself, and I'd always get into problems. I would get into church work, or, they'd take me aside, right? So I had this list of columns where I didn't stand up for myself. And, it says it's an amazing program, amazing. And so then I remember, like, then they said, when you get this done, then you do a step 5. So then you go to someone, and you just go through the list, and you explain it to another human being, to God, and to another human being. So I didn't think I'd get much out of that, because I had grown up religious, and the Mennonite revival system, you do this all the time. I really didn't think I'd get much out of it, but I'm like, well, at this point, I'm willing to do whatever, because what I was doing wasn't working. So I went, and I was a pastor. My step 5 didn't go well at all. He was, there was still a lot of religious trauma associated, with being around a pastor. There he was on the other side of the table, and then he just grabs my literature out of my hands and just reads it, and it set up a lot of things, but it gave me a tremendous amount of peace getting that done. And then in the big book, it says, after you get that done, you should go by yourself and just meditate for a while, take an hour to yourself. So I remember going down to the lake, and I built a fire, and I burned the papers, and just this, and I'm sitting by the lake, and this intense feeling of just peace comes over me. And it's a peace I've never had, as a kid or anything. Just intense peace, to be okay. And then the other promise of the literature, it says, once you get that done, like the step 5, then we're able to look the world in the eye. And it was wild. For the first time in forever, or a long time, I could just look people in the eye. It felt like I was, instead of watching the world, I was part of the world, right? And and then, oh, that was the other thing. There's also the step 3 prayer. That felt surreal to me too, because we kneeled down in my garage, just a complete disaster at that time, because I strove to keep things organized as it is, but if you've ever been around an alcoholic, they can be real messy. So anyways, so we're finding a spot to kneel down and amidst all the rubble, and this this guy is just praying over me, the step 3, turn the will and lives over to the care of God as we understand him. And I just remember sitting there, and I'm like, here I am, Mennonite boy, who knows the Bible front and back, and this and so I feel guys praying over me, and I'm just like, it was just a beautiful moment for me. You know what I mean? That just the love that's out there. In humanity. You know what I mean? He cared enough to come out of his day but anyways, so then there was that, and then he was spending a lot of time with me. But then back to now, so I'm maybe about 80 days sober or something. But before I got sober, I had this is why I didn't mention his name, because anonymity. But I had booked all inclusive for like a resort to go to a wedding of that the widow of my best friend who had died there, and it was going to be her wedding, and it was at an all inclusive resort, and I was really worried about it because I was going to be sober here. And but I'm like, well, we'll just do our best. He was trying to get me to get my. I didn't do my step forward then. He was trying. I'm kind of skipping around here, but he was trying to get my step forward done before that, so I'd have a bit more peace. But I remember loading up my big book and heading out. And I'm 80 days. I couldn't stop on my own. I couldn't stop drinking on my own for like 2, 3 years, and here I am. Just going into inclusive resort, and we'd paid for the full package before I quit drinking. So and it's also my best friend's widow's wedding, right? So we go, but I'm like, well, there's only we said we'd go, so we're gonna go. So I went, and I remember, and life doesn't play fair. Like I'm there, and then I'm ordering all these the non-alcoholic drinks, and they're all full of sugar. And of course, I'd been an alcoholic. I hadn't taken care of my dental health for quite some time. I didn't have time for that. So one of my teeth got infected or exploded, and I was in a tremendous amount of pain. And I wanted to drink so bad, but every morning, it was just somehow I didn't drink. And then every morning I'd be out on my balcony reading my big book, doing my meditations. I didn't have much of a prayer life then, but I was just really trying, right? And it was working for me. And then this is the part, growing up Mennonite, it's kind of like taste not, touch not, like everything's a big temptation, and you have to resist, right? But in the big book, it talks of, like, when I say big book, it means a book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It talks about it talks about being spiritually fit, and by that it means like you're free from resentments, free from fear, and you're just one with the Creator, and you're at peace with life. And I really tried to do to the best of my abilities to be that. And then just an absolutely beautiful ceremony. Like when we they got married, it was incredible. Like in life we tend to think that things are final, but I couldn't imagine my best friend's widow ever smiling again at the funeral. I was crushed. And you know um she's married, and it was just the most beautiful thing. She's in her white dress, and she's dancing on the sand, and she's smiling on her face for probably 3 hours. You know what I mean? It was one of the most beautiful things I've seen. Like, for me, my higher power, it's never, terrible things happen, but he turns it for good. Like, not that, how do you say this? Not that he'd ever want him to die, but once terrible things happen, there's a way through. There's always a way through these things. There's always a way through. And you know, um, it still doesn't make sense to me, the loss, but it's just incredible to see, incredibly healing, to see her just dancing and enjoying life, and with a smile on her face. But then I'm there, and then during that reception, the waiters come out, and I was drinking a lot of club soda because the sugary drinks were exploding my teeth. So I ate a club soda and mint. They mixed it up, and they gave me like an extra mojito. And I took a sip of that, and a second it touched my lips, I just spit it into the sand, like before I could even taste it. And this was, you know, And in the big book, it says that's actually if you're spiritually fit, that it says when you, if alcohol does touch your lips, you're going to recoil as if you touched a hot flame. And then like alcohol has tremendous power over me because that was that. But then a year later, this is just on this little topic. Then a year later, about being spiritually fit, about a year later, I was making some sausages. I do a lot of hunting. I was making some sausages, and it was a duck. I'm, typical Mennonite here. I can't pronounce anything because I just read it and never listen to radio and stuff. But that duck l'orange or whatever, and so it called for orange liquor in it. So I mean, there's nothing in it. Hey, like right now, I got more liquor around my house than when I was drinking because I don't drink it all right. Like I just drove around for a month with a case of wine in the back of my truck. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it's just an example of being spiritually fit. But I wasn't spiritually fit then. I was having a lot of fear. I think we just bought a new house. I was having a lot of fear of financial issues. And anyway, so I'm like, well, so I bought an off-brand liquor for this sausage because it's just sausage. But I'm like, all the alcoholic mind works. I'm like, well, I should take a little bit of this, just take a taste. So I put a little bit in a tablespoon, and I'm not spiritually fit at that time, and it crosses my lips, and the second I taste it, I just want the whole bottle. And I never did. Like I managed, I phoned a sponsor, I worked through that, dumped the bottle out and that stuff, but I just figured I'd use that for an example of being where spiritually fit. When you are spiritually fit, the power that is there, when you're walking in the sunlight of the spirit of love, it's incredible. The universe, I think it talks about there, the universe, just wants to help you or whatever. But I didn't know, like I'm kind of rambling here. But then yeah, I go through AA. My life is improving, my health is coming back, that sort of thing. And then but it's just about love, right? And so then I guess my mother-in-law gets really sick about this time. It was a couple years ago, and she's close to dying. So I hadn't read my Bible in years, but I went and I had an NLT version of the Bible, and I was traveling. I was working out of town, but I pulled it out and I read it, and it was really weird. It was like the words were just jumping out at me, like the Bible was alive, and that was the other thing. I've always read the Bible, like a lot, even as a Mennonite. I would go there, lots of Psalms and stuff. And I found it really odd one time. A minister asked in church, who's all read the Bible from cover to cover? And I raised my hand, and another guy who was getting expelled all the time raised his hand, and two old men raised their hands. But in a congregation of 150 people, where the most important book was a Bible, four of us had read it cover to cover. But anyways, so but yeah, it was really weird. Like the words were coming out, just jumping out at me, and then because it was really tough for me, like to face, because we knew we were going to lose her, and then to face death without an idea of God or whatever, that was really tough for me. So, I still don't have it figured out, and I think if you do have God figured out, your God's pretty small. If you have your God figured out, he's pretty small. And if I can figure out a God, I can manipulate him. So, I don't know, like, but the Bible became alive to me. And it's it was really strange. And then I went to the funeral there, and the pastor talked about the woman from the well, and how life, water sustains you. I can't really describe it, but it really touched something in me. It was just a beautiful funeral. Like my mother-in-law has always been a really strong. They're both in AA too. My in-laws, so that was another thing. And they were a big part of my journey. Like my father-in-law has been my rock. He's incredible. And but it was just an amazing experience to be at a funeral where like death wasn't the end. It was more like the power of Christ was coming through in this funeral, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So it was an amazing experience how her life would touch so many people and stuff. And I wish I could put it into words better, but I can't. But anyways, I started attending that church, and I've been to a lot of different churches. I was done with church. I still say that I don't go to church much. I'm like, when they come up with something new, I'll start going to church again, right? Like they're kind of all one and the same to me. But this one he was big on healing. So then I started really, and he talked a lot of power, talked about the power of healing and the power in Christ. And that was something I don't feel like I had ever heard before. I'd heard a lot of power about the rules. I'd heard, but it was all up to me. And so then, anyways, we're meeting, and he gets me to go through. They're incredible books, actually, especially for me, and working through stuff. But it's oh, that's the thing. He was big on talking about curses, and that sort of thing. So the books are Victory Over the Darkness and Bondage Breaker by Neil T. Henderson. So he had me read those, and it was quite an incredible, especially Bondage Breaker. It talks about I need to read it again, actually, but it's about generational trauma, generational stuff, and it really made me look into the curses, I would call them, that were put on me, right? Like, what they told me when I would leave, and I believe that. And I've also looked into it, and I believe they do actually put a curse on you when you leave. Like, I believe they say, we deliver you unto Satan. So, and I've, so that was a big thing for me. I read through those books, and then,
Okay, I'm sorry. What were the names of those books?
Victory Over the Darkness and Bondage Breaker, both by Neil T. Anderson. I would recommend them if anyone's, curious, but it talked a lot about our identity in Christ and the power that is in Christ. So, they were it was really helpful. I went through that with him, and then that, what I described about my aunt, like, I was praying through a lot of the books, doing this stuff in there. And I was at work one day, and that came up, about my aunt. And there again, just the healing. And but I acknowledged it, for what it was. It was sexual abuse, and no one had acknowledged that in my past. But now that I'm older, I could, it just became clear to me that's what it was. And then about that time, so then I forget the exact events, but then it was, I brought that up, and my aunt, that same aunt that abused me, was dying. And it's like, well, I don't know if I should confront her or not. um you know but I decided, I booked a ticket home, and I'm like, if she's alive when I get home, I'll confront her. And she was gone, by the time I got home. But she was a very she spent a lot of time with me. That was also very confusing for me. She was one of the, like, she was like my second mom, like a lot of those predators are. um but that, yeah, it was just really, it was pretty confusing, but working through it, it was amazing. We got a lot of peace over it, working through these generational, like, you see the family and how, she had been abused and she abused me, and it stops at me. That's all I can control, is me, and it ends here. I don't understand that. Like, I've been abused. I've never had a sexual thought towards a kid, and I don't even understand how anyone could. But some people do. Hurt people, right? And it's not okay. That's one thing. In AA, you hear the stories, almost, to a man, to a lady. I don't know if there is anyone in AA who hasn't been sexually abused. There may be. We don't talk about that, but it's a big part of addictions. They say, that is often the gateway too. But then, working through all this stuff, I realized, like, as a kid, it became clear, like, somewhere down the line, there was, for example, here again, no names. And I hope I'm not saying too much. It's his story, but I feel like it's a very powerful one, because it affected me. But, you realize, like, there was a kid who had a coke addiction problem or whatever, and he's always, the bad kid, and then you find out that it was his dad who was abusing him the whole time. And that really shook me up when I found out that. And then this was after, my friend had died, but the text came back like, what about these cases in Edberg? And, I'd been sitting, it was really painful for me, the shunning and, my family rejecting me and didn't want to be around me, all that stuff. That was really painful, losing my friends. And here's this guy's abusing kids. And I mean, I think they expelled him for like one day or something, or, the revival guy came, the Benny Hebert or whatever, the old guy they send out. And, they work with him, he stays at his house, but it doesn't get talked about, it doesn't get acknowledged. But meanwhile, the, the kid is a real problem with coke. And that's what we're going to focus on here, whatever, right? So, it's really sad. And I've always come to the conclusion, like, the system is built upon it's just going to sound really harsh. And, to my Mennonite friends that listen to this, I apologize, but I do also think it's the truth. I cannot say it is that the system is built upon victims, because without victims, you don't have fear. And if you would do a number on the amount of the expelled people that have been abused, it would be very, very high percent. In the past, like, now people are leaving because they don't, but like back in my day, people didn't really leave unless it was big problems, right? Like, now we're in a different time and people are just leaving because, a lot of this stuff is getting exposed. But, that's something we look into. Like, in the Bible, it says there's a lot of, excuse me, there's a lot of, what's the verse? A lot of instructors. There's a lot of condemnation in the Holdemans, but where's the love? Where's the healing? I was a 16-year-old kid. I got condemnation, but where was the healing? And I'm okay now. I found my healing. And it's been incredible. But anyways, back to, I'm getting a little sidetracked here but the bondage breaker. I worked through that, and it talks about just praying through things. So then this is something like, for anyone who's been abused. I get the anger, my abuse has, the physical nature of it, maybe even, it wasn't extreme. It was more just inappropriate and weird, where, some people, it's like, I can't imagine what they've had to go through. And there's too much of that in the Mennonites. But there is healing for that. Like, I have a cousin also who was abused, who's, there is healing for that. But like, there again, life isn't fair. Like, I love the saying, like, the trauma and the abuse, it's not your fault, but it's up to you to find healing. Like, that's our job. We can only control ourselves. So, and for me, that was a big part of my resentments, is once I started to get healthy. Like, for example, if for money, I had a lot of resentments about my grade 9 education and stuff. And it's still, it's a challenge, out there. But but when I'm doing well, the resentments come when I'm not doing well. So I think it's so important to get healthy. Um, you know, but that's where life again isn't fair. The healthier you get, the easier it is. But anyways, back to the bondage breaker thing. So I'm working through that, and I think so. Then it was my aunt's funeral, and I'm just filled with a real peace and light. Like, it's a really weird thing. Family, some of them, a lot of Mennonites there, a lot of art in that family. But it was a supernatural kind of joy I had that day. Like, it's at her funeral, but you know, and then after, I was just meditating after, and I felt this twitching in my arm. Like, I'm praying and meditating, and I'm working through the bondage, and I felt this twitching in my arm, and this twitching in the darkness, and something like my arm just started shaking, like just twitching, and this intense feeling of light and love came over me, and I feel a generational spirit passed that night, and it changed me. AA changed me. Being going through that. Like, in AA, they talk about a white light experience and then a gradual experience. And I had AA was more a gradual one where we worked through stuff, and change happens. If you look back over a year, I've changed a lot, but but that was an incredible experience. And actually, I had another. Here again, I don't want to tell other people's stories, but someone else in my family recently experienced something very close to the same thing. And it makes you curious on generational trauma. I'm one gypsy or something, so what's all back there, I don't know. But the feeling, there again, when I joined AA and I did my step forward, there was a peace that I'd never felt. And then this, like, something just lifted off of me, and that chatter in the back of my head, it's not there most days anymore. I'm incredibly grateful for the healing. And but yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of my story, but I would like to acknowledge the pain, and the it's a system. The Mennonites, it's a system, and the kids are powerless. The private school system, it holds an incredible amount of power over these kids. And it's come to me, like, I was like, well, what do I do? What do I do with this? All this hurt, like, how do I make a difference? And then if you look at the story, of Christ in the Bible, then that's what he did. He took down a system. And how did he do that? He did it by healing. So I would just like to point out there's healing out there. And the way to take down the system, is to heal. Heal yourself. And the healing that's out there is incredible. There's an incredible amount of joy. There's an incredible amount of love. And it's the peace that's out there. It's incredible. It can only control us the amount that we let it control us. And in the end, the power is ours. And I choose healing. And I'm just so grateful for what I have. Like, when I wake up every day, it's like I won the lottery. I never knew I could feel this good in my life. Like, as a kid, I wish I could go back and tell, like, the 6-year-old me that was scared of the sunsets, or the 8-year-old me, or whatever. I wish I could tell him, it's going to be okay. In the end, it's okay. And in the end, all there is love. So, do you got any questions for me?
No, that's a beautiful story. Yes. How long have you been sober?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So I think that's about, it's going to be 7 years, January 19th. So yeah.
Congratulations.
Oh,
That is
thank you.
awesome.
But it's well, that's the other thing I should point out is, like, I thought getting sober, like, I thought it was going to be like with, like, that movie with like Castaway with Tom Hanks and his volleyball. Like, I thought I'd be counting down the days, but it's not like that. Like, I couldn't picture a sober life, but it's been incredible. It's been way better than it's been better than I could imagine. So yeah, and not like, there's lots of people that drink that aren't alcoholics. I don't want anyone to, like, have anything. Just because you drink doesn't mean you're an alcoholic. But to me, the definition of an alcoholic is if you want to stop and you can't, well, then you got a problem. So.
Okay, very good. And it sounds like going through AA gave you a lot of even spiritual healing.
Oh, a lot of healing, a lot of healing. Yeah, yeah. No, and like, the people, like, it's incredible. Like, there's, like, I moved to Vancouver Island, and the group here, it's just an incredible group. Like, the love that's out there, and people of all, like, doesn't, like, you see, everyone has this thing of God, but everyone has a need. Everyone needs healing. And it's so empowering to see, people come in, they're completely broken, like I was, and then within months, their face lights up, they're engaging. It takes years. Like, the one guy who just came in, it takes years. It takes a year sometimes. But that's, on change, and that's one thing I want to say is, with my resentment towards, pedophiles in the system, and I'm like, how are they getting away with this? But at my aunt's funeral, I I I made it a point to go up and say hi to a few pedophiles. And if you look deep into a pedophile's eyes, it's obvious they're not getting away with anything. They can't make eye contact. There's, it's a terrible life. It's not just, and that's they didn't get healing either. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how this system goes. But I feel that's the way to take it down is through healing, and the healing is out there. So
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It is a beautiful story.
oh, thank
Um,
you. I hope it made sense. I was bouncing around quite a bit, but I hope you can make sense of that.
you did a wonderful job. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us and your vulnerability with
Oh,
us.
thank you.
It's beautiful, all of it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for for this platform. I think it's really healing. Just to be able to share, and that's what we do in AA. It's broken people. It's like it's a beautiful system. It's a bunch of broken people getting together, but through that, the miracles happen, right? So
Yes, and that is the beauty of it. The beauty of it. Okay, well, I really appreciate it. You know, I want to ask this, and
yep.
but if anybody would want to reach out to you, is there a way for them to contact you to talk about if
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. Like there again, the spiritual principles, anonymity, but also, to reach out. So I'm not sure. Maybe if there is, I would love that. I would love to talk. Like, because when I was drinking, it was just me, and I was so alone, right? And there was just nobody. So it's not even about drinking, but if someone's alone, by all means, reach out to me, and maybe yeah, if we could just leave my email or number in the notes without my name, I don't think that'll break anonymity. You know what I mean? So I think that should be fine.
okay.
So yeah, but no, I would love it. Like if anyone talks, just to talk. Like these are serious spiritual things that we face that have been put on us. Like it's not like for me, some people have the dream of the white picket fence and all that life has to offer. For me, it's a win every day if I can breathe, if I can look people in the eye, and if I'm there for my family, that's my dream. I don't need more than that. To me, that's everything there is, right? So, but I understand how, I to everyone, that's questioning, or crying on the floor in the bathroom, or like just feeling hopeless. Like these are powerful spiritual bondages. This is powerful stuff. These curses that are placed on us. This isn't. People die. We lose people to suicide. We lose people to different things like and addictions and this stuff. But this is powerful stuff. But there is healing. There is healing, and I just want that to be the message is the healing that's out there, because I'm not the amount of healing that went through, like it's incredible for me. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And it's for anyone. It's for anyone. you know
And not that this is how I want to end, but I do want to say this out there to all of the Holdemans listening, that maybe instead of doing the quote unquote holy kiss, maybe you can kiss on the cheek. That would be a safer,
I,
easier, better
I
way to
guess
do.
no one's ever been to Italy, eh?
I know. That, and that is what's so interesting, because that is such a common greeting, even in the
Yeah,
Hispanic, which my mom
yeah.
is Hispanic, even in the
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Hispanic, yeah, community, like kiss them on the cheeks. It's
Yeah,
not a
yeah.
big deal.
I believe that's what they did. I believe that's what they did back in the day. But yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I'm, I,
yeah. There
I,
were some
I'm
awkward
weird this.
moments. I still
Yes.
remember the one time I was in a different congregation, and this old guy, without a word, comes. The guy's maybe 18. He's 50. He comes out to me in the bathroom, doesn't say a word, sticks out his hand, and leans in for a kiss. It's me and him in the bathroom.
Just
Just
present your
talk
cheek.
about awkward. Yeah.
I know. Oh,
Oh,
yikes. Okay. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much. Don't, but thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing, Tyson, honestly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for this platform and for what you're doing. Thank you so much for the time you put into this. So,
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
And I just want everyone to know the amount of love that's out there for you. You're worthy, and you deserve it. You deserve all the love, and that's all there is love.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.